quick reminder to subscribe. Story 1. I walked into third period already half asleep, and our sub was standing on a chair, waving a broom like she was conducting an orchestra. She said she needed to redirect the classroom's airflow because the vibes felt crunchy. She spun the broom in circles until she smacked a ceiling tile and a cloud of dust rained down on her. She blamed us for not stabilizing the energy field and made us sit with our hands on our heads for the rest of class. I didn't learn anything except that dust is weirdly confident. Story 2. The moment our sub introduced himself as Captain Knowledge, I knew we were done. He wore a cape made from 2 tablecloths and said he only responded to nautical commands. If we wanted him to teach, we had to say things like, "Hoist the lesson, Captain. A kid asked to use the restroom, and he granted permission to abandon ship." Then he tripped on his cape, slid into the recycling bin, and taught the rest of class from inside it like it was a submarine. Story 3. Rain was hammering the windows, and our sub insisted thunder was the government dropping bowling balls from airplanes. She said sound waves bounced off the atmosphere like a trampoline. Every time lightning flashed, she made us crouch under our desks so the sky wouldn't get jealous of our height. She tried reporting all of this to the office, but she grabbed the stapler and kept yelling, "Hello, operator," into it. It wasn't connected to anything except her confidence. Story 4. Our sub walked in wearing sunglasses indoors and chewing an entire pack of gum like she was in some survival challenge. She claimed she could smell dishonesty and made each of us walk past her one at a time so she could scan our auras. She paused on one kid and said he ate a sandwich he wasn't proud of. No clue what that meant. She wrote him up anyway for culinary secrets. Story 5. The sub handed out a worksheet but then spent the whole class trying to catch a fly. He had 2 rulers taped together and a plastic cup like he was on a mission from nature. Every time he missed, he'd shout that the fly was trained. By the end, he built a cardboard fort around his desk and declared the fly was plotting a coup. He even left a note for our real teacher saying the classroom was compromised. Story 6. A sub came in eating cereal out of a mixing bowl, not a normal bowl, the kind you knead dough in. She didn't bring a spoon, so she used a ruler like a paddle. She tried teaching while milk dripped off her chin and onto the assignment sheets. When the principal walked in, she panicked and shoved the entire mixing bowl into her tote bag. It leaked the whole time like a breakfast waterfall. Story 7. I had a sub who thought textbooks were harmful because information should roam free. She made us take all the books off the shelves and set them on the floor so they could graze. Anytime someone picked one up, she'd gasp like we were stealing livestock. She kept guiding a dictionary back toward the others like she was herding cattle. The librarian had to come down when she tried feeding a thesaurus a granola bar. Story 8. Our substitute practiced something she called radical seating. She said we should sit wherever our hearts felt aligned. Someone sat in the supply closet. Another perched on a rolling chair like a gargoyle. A kid sat on the windowsill and tried to meditate. The rolling chair kid launched himself across the room by accident and crashed into the windowsill kid. The sub clapped like she'd just watched modern art come to life. Story 9. We were supposed to have a quiz, but our sub said quizzes were tools of oppression disguised as paper. She told us to ask the universe for answers by spinning in a circle with our eyes closed and pointing at random letters. One kid spun too fast, fell into a desk, and claimed gravity was biased. The sub said that meant he connected with cosmic truth. His quiz looked like someone attacked it with a highlighter. Story 10. One sub claimed he had a 6th sense for rebellion, which was funny because he was the one rebelling. He kept forgetting he was the teacher and whispered to us like we were planning a heist. He passed around the attendance sheet like it was a secret map. When an administrator walked in, he panicked and pretended to fall asleep on purpose. She asked if he was okay, and he said he was one with the floor now. Story 11. The sub burst into the classroom wearing a lab coat that still had a Goodwill tag on it. He slapped a clipboard on the desk and said he was running a behavioral study on teens under mild confusion. Then he started teaching Spanish in a British accent. Anytime someone asked a normal question, he'd switch subjects entirely. Like one kid asked how to conjugate a verb, and he responded with a full explanation of photosynthesis. Half the class tried to keep up, and the other half gave up completely. At the end, he collected our papers even though we hadn't been assigned anything. He called it data harvesting. Story 12. Our substitute wouldn't write on the whiteboard because he said markers were emotional weapons. He made us repeat everything he said out loud so the lesson could float freely in the shared airspace. It turned into a weird echo chamber where he'd say a sentence and we'd all mumble it back like confused cult members. At one point, the principal walked by and heard 30 kids whispering about fractions in unison. She backed away slowly, like she had discovered something she wasn't ready to understand. Story 13. The guy walked in sipping soup from a travel mug. Not coffee, soup. He kept stopping mid-lesson to slurp loudly, then sigh like the world weighed heavy on him. I asked what kind he had, and he told me soup reveals itself only to the chosen. He spent 20 minutes rearranging the desks into a circle because geometry is spiritual, then forgot why he did it and made us move them back. When the bell rang, he whispered to the mug, "They weren't ready," and left. Story 14. We had a sub who decided learning would happen faster if we all took turns being the teacher. When he picked the first kid, she just walked to the front and froze. He yelled, "Excellent leadership," like she had done something profound. Then he made her assign homework to us, which she took way too seriously. A kid tried refusing and the sub shouted, "Respect the altar of knowledge." No one stepped to the altar after that. Story 15. This sub kept calling the classroom a habitat. He'd narrate everything like he was filming a nature documentary. Someone sharpened their pencil and he whispered, "Here we observe the young preparing for academic survival." A kid sneezed and he said, "The herd startles." When the fire drill went off, he said, "Ah yes, the migration begins," and followed us outside doing a fake whisper voice the whole time. Story 16. Our substitute kept asking for the student in charge. We told him there wasn't one. He insisted every class has a student in charge, usually the one with the most mysterious aura. Then he pointed at me. "I don't have an aura. I barely have a personality before lunch." He made me stand at the board and pretend to make decisions while he sat at a desk taking deep breaths like he was at a spa. He kept whispering, "Guide us, chosen one." I guided no one. Story 17. This sub hated calculators. Not for educational reasons, but because he believed calculators secretly judge human intelligence. He kept muttering at them like they were talking behind his back. During a quiz, he collected them all and locked them in a cabinet for their own safety. When someone knocked the cabinet by accident, he gasped and yelled, "They plot." The quiz turned into pure guessing. Story 18. The substitute brought a ukulele and said he used music to regulate classroom energy. He played 3 chords that sounded like a washing machine in distress. Every time someone whispered, he'd stop mid-strum and stare them down while plucking one dramatic single note. At one point, a kid sneezed and the sub sang a 4-second song about germs attacking democracy. No one knew what he meant. Story 19. We had this elderly sub who refused to acknowledge technology. When the projector turned on automatically, he hissed at it like it was alive. He said the light square was trying to lure us. Then he grabbed a stack of worksheets and threw them over the projector beam like he was smothering it. He unplugged literally everything in the room except the fish tank. That, he said, was the only trustworthy machine. Story 20. The sub spent the entire period trying to get the classroom microphone to work, even though we told him we didn't have one. He kept tapping random objects like the stapler and saying, "Is this thing on?" He tried speaking into the hole in the wall where the TV used to be. When that failed, he cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted every line of the lesson like he was calling across a canyon. My ears are still recovering. Story 21. The sub walked in holding a giant plastic jug filled with marbles. He set it on the desk like it was a sacred relic and said the marbles represented our academic vibrations. Then he bumped the desk with his hip and the entire jug toppled over. Thousands of marbles scattered across the floor like we were inside a pinball machine. He tried to pretend it was intentional and told us to observe how knowledge disperses. A kid slipped, did a full cartoon skid, and the sub clapped like he had just demonstrated gravity personally. Story 22. Our sub wore headphones the entire class even though nothing was playing. He said he liked the sound of silence but louder. Anytime someone asked a question, he'd lift one ear cup like a secret agent receiving intel. One kid asked for help on a problem, and he replied, "The universe already told you the answer." She said the universe told her nothing. He nodded sadly and said, "Some signals don't reach everyone." Story 23. There was a substitute who treated the classroom computer like an ancient artifact. He put both hands on the monitor and whispered, "Show me your secrets." Then he pressed a single key with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. When the screensaver popped up with floating bubbles, he gasped like he witnessed a miracle. He spent the entire class trying to figure out how to command the bubble spirit by adjusting the mouse sensitivity. Story 24. The sub said physical education could be done anywhere, even a math classroom. He blew a whistle and told us to warm up our knowledge muscles. Then he made us jog in place for 5 minutes while he judged everyone's academic stamina. A kid tried to stop because he twisted his ankle. And the sub said, "Pain is just tired excellence." The kid sat down anyway. The sub awarded him strategic bravery. Story 25. We had a sub who kept a pack of crackers in his pocket. Not in a bag, loose crackers. He'd take one out, blow it off like it was dusty furniture, and eat it mid-lecture. Crumbs floated everywhere. One landed on my test. He saw it and said, "That's knowledge seasoning." When he finished the pack, he crumpled the empty wrapper and tossed it behind him without looking. It hit a kid in the forehead. He said that meant the kid was chosen. Story 26. The substitute made us push all the desks to the sides so he could map the flow of truth. He then took a dry erase marker and drew a giant spiral on the floor. We weren't allowed to step on the spiral because he was channeling insight through geometry. A kid accidentally walked across it to sharpen his pencil, and the sub gasped like someone destroyed a sacred temple. He redrew the spiral 3 times before admitting he ran out of marker ink. Story 27. Our sub announced that he had synesthesia, but only sometimes, and he could taste thoughts if they were loud enough. He kept pointing at random students, saying things like, "You're thinking about bread," or "Stop imagining the colour purple, it tastes dusty." No one admitted anything. But he insisted we were mentally crunchy today. When someone asked what crunchy tasted like, he stared at a wall for 10 seconds and replied, "Tuesday." Story 28. The substitute arrived wearing 2 watches on the same wrist. He said one told regular time and the other told teacher time, which apparently ran faster whenever students looked shifty. Every time someone glanced at the clock, he spun around and yelled, "Teacher time accelerates." By the end of class, he claimed his teacher watch had experienced 3 full hours and he needed a lunch break even though it was 9:15 in the morning. Story 29. The sub refused to touch the textbooks because he said paper made his hands emotionally itchy. He made us turn pages for him while he leaned over our desks like a weary Victorian poet. Anytime we turned a page too slowly, he'd whisper, "Let the story breathe." When we turned one too fast, he gasped as if we slapped him with literature. He didn't teach anything, but he definitely bonded with that textbook. Story 30. This sub decided the thermostat was a living creature and kept checking on it like it was a sick pet. He'd crouch next to it, whisper questions, then stand up and say stuff like, "It's overwhelmed, be gentle with your energy." When the heater clicked on by itself, he bowed. A kid reached toward it to adjust the temperature, and the sub swatted his hand away like he was protecting a sacred relic. We spent the whole day freezing because he believed warmth had to be earned spiritually.